Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies, and this video is going to be of Misinformation in General by Manly P. Hall, an article taken from Horizon, Journal of the Philosophical Research Society, Volume 12, Number 1, Summer 1952. Of misinformation in general. There is a popular belief that when thoughts, opinions, or notions have been reduced to print, they gain larger and more honorable estate. Actually, many books have been written for no good reason, and the number increases daily. Some of these volumes become a weariness unto the spirit, and others are a perpetual source of amusement. In that strange and intricate procedure by which the author's manuscript is transformed into a finished book, there may also occur certain accidents. These may not contribute to the clarity of the text, but they do provide a note of diversion from what might otherwise be a tedious endeavor. For example, in the second edition of the first authorized edition of the King James Bible, the editors of this infallible work overlooked a curious error made by the typesetters of all incredible mistakes in Holy Writ. Matthew 26:36 is the outstanding. Judas is substituted for Jesus in the following. Then coming Judas with them into the place called Gethsemane, and saith unto the disciples, Sit ye here, while I go and pray yonder. A version of the Bible published in 1549 has a helpful note appended to 1 Peter 3. This is devoted to a husband's responsibility for the spiritual development of his wife. The delightful improvement of the original reads, And if she be not obedient and helpful unto him, endeavoreth to beat the fear of God into her head, thereby she may be compelled to learn her duty and do it. Perhaps the editors having domestic troubles, as the result of this admonition, this Bible is usually called the wife-beating Bible. In 1688, O.P. Sonnenschleifer involved himself seriously in a deep and most perplexing problem. Incidentally, the matter under discussion is one of the few subjects which have not been exhausted by modern jurisprudence. This little book, published in quarto, is devoted to the legal rights of fleas. The subjects considered included: Are fleas subject to civil law? Can a flea enjoy the legal privileges of a pauper? Is a flea attached to the person of a noble rank higher than a flea belonging to a commoner? When goods belonging to a married couple are enjoyed in common, does this include the flea? And may fleas be included in the bequest and legacies? M. Rochelle chose for himself a labor of love. He versified the 2,281 articles of the Code Napoleon. He was of the opinion that the ladies of France would be more inclined to a study of the laws of their country if they could read them in charming poetry. His book, which was published in 1810, dedicated to the Empress Maria Louise, contained more than 16,000 lines of verse. The real charm lies in the effect of trying to rhyme legal statutes. Unfortunately, there is nothing duller than the statutes of law, and when these take on sprightly rhymes and poetic synonyms, they transcend imagination. Christophe Lubrever selected an unusual subject for his little book, which was published in 1721. This author developed a methodical system for remembering one's sin, lest any delinquencies should escape the mind and thus be unavailable in moments of repentance. This text should be given careful consideration. By the time, however, that the technique is faithfully followed, it is quite possible that the sin itself will be lost in the formula. Like memory courses, the most difficult part is to remember the method for remembering. The case of Moses Pitt was more real and urgent. Moses Pitt was arrested and confined in debtor's prison after the failure of his business. In his books, he gives the tragic story of the terrible conditions of the jails in his time. Reading will convince the open-minded that there has been great improvement in penal institutions in the last 300 years. The book is illustrated with curious designs, one of which shows a debtor who has fashioned a mousetrap and has been reduced to the emergency of eating mice to keep alive. One George Somernesgar has gained a considerable reputation as a literary impostor. He was born in the south of France and seems to have received an excellent education. For reasons of poverty, he took to the open road as a beggar, and in order to gain some prominence among this class, he posed as a citizen of Japan, and later established himself as having originated in Formosa. Undoubtedly, many inquired about these distant regions, so Somernesgar wrote a book with the ambitious title, An Historical and Geographical Description of Formosa, etc., which was published in London in 1704. It is a document distinguished for misinformation. He invented the entire fiction and even created an elaborate alphabet and grammar for the Formosans. Few were in a position to contradict him, and his book became a basic text on this distinct region. He deceived nearly everyone, and in the closing years of his life became a friend of the scholarly Dr. Johnson. In the good old days, writers frequently came upon evil times. William Prynne felt himself impelled to write a book against the theater, even though the stage was not in good favor back in 1633. Prynne went a little too far and made some most unpleasant remarks about the royal family and the gentry. Prynne was brought before the Star Chamber and received a sentence which should be a proper warning to all malicious scribblers. His books were to be confiscated and burned by the public hangman. His profession was taken from him, and he was deprived of his membership in learned societies and degraded publicly at Oxford, which was his college. He was ordered to stand in the pillory in two places, Westminster and Cheapside, and to have one of his ears cut off in each place. Lastly, he was condemned to a fine of £5,000 and perpetual imprisonment. The Legenda Aurea, or Golden Legend, is the principal source of religious fables about the lives of saints. The author, whose name was Varahi, must have had an inventive mind. In spite of the incredible stories which it contains, it was held in high esteem about the year 1500, and those who slighted its dignity were forced to make public recantations of their offenses. This book is responsible for the acceptance of many mistaken notions about the lives of saints and martyrs. Today the subject has lost vitality, but no doubt complicated life for many of our ancestors. It is written in the spirit of the Arabian Nights entertainment, and is about as believable. A doctor in the faculty of the University of Paris decided about 1623 that there was a serious ailment which had not heretofore been approached clinically. With true scholarly mind, Dr. Jacques Ferrand made a serious attempt to teach medical students how to diagnose and prescribe for the fantastic disease entitled love. There are several chapters devoted to the unfoldment of the theme. One section contains appropriate warnings as to how the doctor should protect himself against infection. There is a chapter entitled Surgical, Pharmaceutical, and Dietetical Remedies Against Love. The doctor even goes so far as to analyze whether the heart or the brain is the chief organ attacked by the malady, and if love should be regarded as a hereditary disease. It is all most scientific. Robert Greene, in his lively work, A Quip for an Upstart Courtier, attempted in a subtle manner to rebuke the customs and habits of his time. He attacked, among others, a stage player probably intended to be Shakespeare. Evidently, he had an aversion to the Broad of Avon, for in another writing, Green referred to the playwright as an upstart crow beautified with our feathers, the only shake seen in our country. The subtlety of Green is best appreciated when the reader of a quit, etc., discovers that the dispute, which is the subject of the work, is carried between the personification of a pair of velvet breeches and a pair of cloth breeches. How wonderful are the workings of the human mind. Edward Topsell, in his authoritative Folio, The History of Four-Footed Beasts and Serpents, made a vital contribution to the preservation of ignorance. In his profusely illustrated tome, the learned Topsell presented true and faithful reproductions of griffins, sitters, mermaids, unicorns, and a variety of composite human and animal forms which are simply out of this world. He then appended a theater of insects as a further stimulus to his own imagination. It is said that the Shakespearean plays are indebted to Topsell for a not too concise statement of popular opinions on natural history. He wrote largely, but not too well. If other subjects fail, there is always recourse to the learned Burgrave in his Lampus Vitae et Mortis. Leyden, 1678. Burgrave described a strange and extraordinary lamp which was fed with a liquid made from human blood. This lamp would burn as long as the person lived from whom the blood was taken, and immediately would go out when the person died. But this is not all. The way the lamp burned and flickered indicated all the important events in the life of the man who supplied the blood. There were illustrations showing the preparation of the liquid and other relevant details. This form of illumination, however, does not seem to have become very popular. And so it goes. One never knows what will be found hidden in old books, and it is even more obscure as to what was occurring in the minds of their authors. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.